Welcome to Whispers and Fire audiobooks, where cold whispers meet burning hearts. In the quiet of winter, every whisper carries a story, and every story carries a spark. This is Whispers and Fire audiobooks. Blossoms of trust, harvest of hearts, winter's warmth, eternal fields, soft music, autumn wind, the rustle of leaves turning gold. Welcome back to Frozen Whispers, the Marines airport test that ignited eternal love. In episode 3, the season shift, and so do Jake and Tracy. Fall settles over the farm like a warm embrace, painting the fields in crimson and gold. This is where their connection deepens into something steady, something rooted, something real. Morning rituals, shared work, quiet confessions, trust begins to blossom in ways neither of them expected. But as winter arrives, the world slows, and their hearts open even more. From the glow of the winter festival to nights wrapped in warmth and whispered promises, Jake and Tracy discover a love that doesn't just comfort, it transforms. And in this episode, we witness the moments that shape their future. The healing, the laughter, the courage to dream again, and the first glimpse of the life they're building together. Episode 3 is where their story changed from healing to belonging, from surviving to living, from hope to forever. Let's step into the next chapter of their journey, where trust blooms, hearts are harvested, winter brings warmth, and love takes root in eternal fields. Legal disclaimer: this novel presents a work of fiction. The story, including all characters, plot lines, and settings, is completely fabricated and not based on any specific real-life individuals, historical events, or actual locations, past, present, or future. No representation is made regarding the accuracy of any events depicted, and any opinions expressed are those of the fictional characters, not the creator. This story is for entertainment purposes only. Content warning and resources. Pinned by creator J.H. D. Langren. This novel discusses mature themes including trauma, PTSD, past suicidal ideation, domestic violence, and institutional corruption. If these topics are difficult for you, please prioritize your well-being. You are not alone. If you or someone you know is struggling, please reach out for help. Every country has local support lines. Check your region's emergency and mental health services for the most accurate numbers. Remember, help is available worldwide. If your country isn't listed, please search online for local hotlines or emergency services in your area. You deserve support and safety. Blossoms of trust. Fall crept in like a lover's sigh, the Midwest fields igniting in a blaze of crimson and gold, leaves whispering secrets as they tumbled from ancient oaks and maples. The air turned crisp, carrying the faint tang of wood smoke from Harlan's chimney and the earthy promise of harvest's end, wrapping the farm in a blanket of amber light that seemed to gild everything it touched, including Jake and Tracy, whose days had woven into a seamless tapestry of shared rhythms and quiet understanding. Mornings began early, the guest room's windows frosted with the season's first kiss of cold. Tracy would wake to find Jake already dressed, sitting by the window watching the sun paint the fields gold, Bennett's dog tags turning slowly in his fingers, a morning ritual she'd learned not to interrupt, but to join. She'd slip beside him, her hand covering his, and they'd sit in comfortable silence until he was ready to face the day. Partnership, she'd say over breakfast, her hazel eyes sparkling like dew on autumn grass as she slid a plate of Elena's apple pancakes across the scarred oak table. Just like us, Jake. Our ideas are mapping out paths we never knew were there. He'd grin, that rare, crooked smile that crinkled the corners of his green eyes, reaching across to tuck a stray auburn curl behind her ear. Paths worth taking. They'd brainstorm, her laptop humming softly amid the clink of forks, spreadsheets unfurling trails optimized for birdwatchers and wildflower blooms, his rough sketches tracing hidden overlooks where the creek bent through the valley. This spot here, he'd say, pencils shading a ridge, you can see the whole valley at dawn. Like watching the world wake up. Her laugh would bubble up, light and free, chasing away the last shadows of the airport suspicion. Then we'll build it together. No more drifting for you. No more hiding for me. Jake's journey from the jagged cliffs of cynicism was etched in these small, sunlit victories, each one a petal unfurling under the warmth of her unwavering faith. One afternoon in the orchard where apples hung heavy and red, he found himself at Elena's kitchen table, pie cooling on the sill. The words came haltingly at first, ambushed tales spilling over slices of cinnamon-laced crust, Bennett's name heavy on his tongue like a talisman. "I have lost him that day," he said. His voice was steady. It wasn't the fractured rasp of nightmares that has passed, but it has turned to a quiet honoring. Kid had a laugh that cut through the dust like sunlight. It was gone in a flash, and I carried the tags like they could bring him back. Elena listened without flinching, her hands folding over his, calloused from tilling and tending. "Ghosts don't fade easy," she said gently. "But talking about them? That helps them rest." She slid him another forkful of pie. "You're not just surviving anymore, Jake. You're living. There's a difference, and it shows." In that shared silence, trust took root. It was kinship, not pity. Evenings at the local VFW hall marked deeper milestones. The dim space was alive with the low hum of stories swapped over beer and faded unit patches sewn on denim jackets. Jake stood taller there, shoulders squared, sharing fragments of desert fury with men whose eyes held the same haunted glint. "Why me?" He'd echo Bennett's phantom question, the scar on his neck visible under the fluorescent light. "Still asking that some nights." Nods rippled around the scarred tables. Here there was no averted eyes. Here there was no cloying sympathy, just the quiet thunder of "we get it, brother," and hands clasped in grips that spoke of battles unspoken. Tracy would wait outside sometimes, leaning against the truck's fender, stars pricking the velvet sky. When he emerged, lighter somehow, the cynicism's barbs dulled, she'd pull him close, her body a harbor against the chill. "I'm proud of you," she'd whisper, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. "Opening up like that? It's braver than any charge." He'd hold her tighter, breathing in the scent of her hair, lavender and home. "Couldn't do it without knowing you're here. You make it safe to remember." Tracy's path mirrored his in graceful symmetry, from the shy, hidden admiration of that airport terminal, where her glances had been tentative as first rain, to this bold bloom of confidence that shed her introversion like an autumn coat. Her shyness, once a veil drawn tight over vulnerabilities, frayed under the farm's relentless honesty. She pitched ideas now with fire, her voice steady on boardroom calls from the porch swing, weaving consulting threads into co-op networks. Clients were drawn not just to her sharpened expertise, but to the grounded authenticity in her voice, the way her stories carried the scent of turned earth. "That co-op deal closed today," she announced one evening, phone still clutched in her hand as she found Jake by the barn. From that old flood-ravaged farm town. Dad would be smiling, seeing me turn mud into blueprints. Jake's arms came around her waist, pulling her close. "Hell of a woman," he murmured into her hair. "Watching you build this makes me want to build something just as strong beside you." She turned in his embrace, looking up at him. "We already are. Every day, we're building it." The intimacy between them evolved like the season, deepening, maturing, growing richer with each passing day. It wasn't just physical closeness, though that was there too, natural and comfortable. It was the thousand small ways they'd learned to be vulnerable with each other. One morning in the kitchen's golden hush, Tracy stood at the counter pouring coffee, humming softly. Jake came up behind her, his arms sliding around her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder. "Morning, darlin'," he murmured. She leaned back into him, fitting perfectly against his chest. "Morning. Sleep okay?" "Better when you're there." She turned in his arms, studying his face. The nightmares still came, but less frequently now. The shadows under his eyes had faded. "You look more rested." "I feel more rested." He cupped her face gently. "You know why?" "Why?" "Because I'm not just surviving anymore. I'm living. With you. For the first time since the desert, I can see a future that doesn't terrify me." Her eyes shimmered. "I spent so long thinking I had to do everything alone. Prove I didn't need anyone. But this, us, it's not weakness. It's strength I didn't know I could have. They stood there in the morning light, coffee forgotten, just holding each other and marveling at how far they'd come from that delayed flight in Chicago. The work on the farm intensified as harvest season peaked. Jake and Harlan spent long days in the fields, while Tracy balanced remote consulting calls with helping Elena prepare for the farmers market. The physical labor grounded them both, honest work with visible results. One evening, after a particularly long day, they found themselves by the creek where water murmured over polished stones. Fireflies winked in the gathering twilight, and the air held autumn's bite. They sat on the bank, shoulders touching, watching the water flow. "I had my first kiss here," Tracy said softly, surprising herself with the confession. 16 years old, fumbling and nervous. Thought it was love. She laughed quietly. It wasn't. It was just practice for the real thing. Jake turned to look at her. "And this? Us. This is real." She met his gaze steadily. "More real than anything I've felt before. It terrifies me and thrills me in equal measure." He took her hand, threading their fingers together. "I used to think I was too damaged for this. That the best I could hope for was to not burden anyone else with my mess. What do you think now?" "Now I think maybe we're not meant to carry everything alone. Maybe the bravest thing we can do is let someone help shoulder the load." She squeezed his hand. "I'm not going anywhere, Jake. Whatever comes, nightmares, business failures, bad seasons, we face it together." "Together," he echoed, and sealed the promise with a kiss that tasted of creek water and autumn leaves and the future they were building one careful day at a time. As the stars emerged overhead, they lay back in the grass, his arm around her shoulders, her head on his chest. The vulnerability of the moment, lying under the vast sky, sharing fears and hopes, felt more intimate than anything physical ever could. "Tell me something you've never told anyone," Tracy said. Jake was quiet for a long time. "Sometimes I'm afraid I'll wake up and this will all be gone. That I'll be back in that terminal, alone, with nothing but my duffel and my scars." "I'm afraid of that too," she admitted. "Afraid I'll sabotage this somehow. Get too focused on work, push you away like I did with Mark. The difference is we're talking about it. We're not letting the fear win." She turned her head to look up at him. "No more tests." "No more tests," he confirmed. "No more walls. Just honesty, even when it's hard." "Especially when it's hard," she agreed. They stayed there until the cold drove them inside, two people who'd been broken and were learning to be whole together. Not because either one fixed the other, but because they'd created a space where both could heal. As they walked back to the farmhouse hand in hand, Tracy realized something profound. She'd spent years building an empire to prove she didn't need anyone. But this, building a life with someone who truly saw her, this was the real success she'd been chasing all along. And Jake, watching the woman beside him move with new confidence, felt the last of his cynicism crumble. He'd spent years running from connection, convinced it would only bring more pain. But Tracy had shown him that vulnerability wasn't weakness. It was the foundation of everything strong and lasting. That night together, under the autumn stars, they were finally home. He nodded, his own memory surfacing softly in the creek mist. "I remember my first leave, buddies betting whether I'd actually go through with asking that girl to dance. They lost their money." He smiled. "But this? Here with you? This is where I finally won." The days that followed that blissful evening ran away with them. Tracy wrestled with a difficult client whose sustainable agriculture project demanded every ounce of her consulting expertise. Jake worked alongside Harlan preparing the barn and outbuildings for winter's arrival, reinforcing structures and stockpiling feed. Despite the demanding work, they found moments to steal away together. One crisp afternoon, with wind tugging at scarves and the fields a riot of rust and umber, they saddled the horses, Old Bess for her, steady as Harlan's tails, and Thunder for him, a gelding with a gait like rolling thunder. The picnic basket swung from the saddle, packed with cheese and crusty bread, Elena's pear tart wrapped in cloth. They rode to the creek's bend, laughter mingling with the wind's playful gusts, her hair streaming like a banner behind. Jake dismounted first, boots sinking into leaf mulch, reaching up to help her down. For a moment they stood close, his hands at her waist, and the world seemed to hold its breath. "Easy, cowgirl," he teased, but his eyes held hers with unmistakable seriousness. They spread the blanket by the water's edge, the creek's ripple song a gentle serenade. Tracy unpacked the basket, her movements graceful and unhurried. "Remember the airport?" Jake asked quietly, settling beside her. "That fluorescent hell, me faking sleep like some paranoid grunt." She paused, a pear slice halfway to her lips, a blush creeping over her cheeks. "How could I forget? My foolish whisper, pouring out dreams to a man I thought was sleeping. After Mark, I swore I'd never be that vulnerable again. Vowed to keep my heart locked up tighter than a boardroom. But you..." Her voice trailed off, soft with wonder. "Foolish." He shook his head, reaching into the saddlebag with a hand that trembled slightly. "You saved me, Tracy. Cracked me open when I was rusted shut." From the leather depths, he drew a small velvet box, simple as the land around them. He flipped it open to reveal a ring, silver band etched with faint vines, centered by a small emerald that caught the light. "No test this time. No more shadows. Just a promise from me to you, scars and all." His voice was steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. "Marry me, Tracy Russell? Build that future we whispered about. Build the fields and trails, nights by the fire, and our roots growing deep. Just us forever." Tears welled instantly, spilling down her cheeks. For a moment she couldn't speak, could only stare at this man who'd traveled so far from that broken soldier on the airport floor. "Yes," she finally breathed, then louder, fierce with certainty. "God, yes, Jake." The kiss that sealed it was tender and profound, their lips meeting under the vast autumn sky. His hands framed her face, and then the ring slipped onto her finger like it had always belonged there. Salt from tears and sweetness from pears mingled between them, and the creek seemed to applaud with a merry gurgle. They held each other for a long time, foreheads pressed together, marveling at the journey that had brought them here, from strangers in a terminal to this moment of absolute commitment. "From that airport test to this," she whispered. "You've given me everything I was too scared to ask for." "You gave me a reason to stop running," he replied. "You gave me a home, you gave me a future, and you gave me hope." When they returned to the farmhouse as dusk bruised the horizon purple, they found Elena and Harlan on the porch. One look at their faces, radiant, transformed, and Elena knew. "You didn't," she breathed. Tracy held up her hand, the emerald catching the last light of day. Elena hooped, pulling Tracy into a flower-dusted embrace that smelled of bread and basil, tears carving tracks through her laughter. "My girl, engaged. Under this old roof? It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect." Harlan clapped Jake's back with a grip like oak roots, and his blue eyes twinkling. "'Bout damn time, son. Welcome to the family proper." That evening, they gathered around the fireplace, the four of them toasting with Elena's homemade wine. Stories flowed of Harlan and Elena's own courtship after the war, of near misses and second chances, of love that blooms in the most unexpected soil. Later, alone in the living room as the fire crackled low, Jake and Tracy sat wrapped in each other's arms on the rug, watching flames dance shadows across the walls. "I never thought I'd have this," Jake said quietly. "A partner. A home. A future that doesn't terrify me." Tracy turned to look up at him. "I spent so long thinking I had to choose ambition or connection, success or love. But with you, I finally understand they're not opposites. They strengthen each other." "You make me work hard to be better," he said. "Every day. Not because I'm trying to earn you, but because you make me believe I'm worthy of being loved as I am." "You are worthy," she said fiercely. "Every scar, every nightmare, every moment of doubt, they're all part of who you are, and I love who you are." They held each other as the fire burned down to embers, two people who'd been lost finding themselves reflected in each other's eyes. News of the engagement spread through their extended circles. Chicago friends descended a fortnight later, piling out of rental cars in a flurry of scarves and city coats, their initial skepticism melting as they saw the transformation in Tracy. She was radiant, her laughter no longer measured but full-throated, her shoulders relaxed, her eyes bright with contentment they'd never seen before, and Jake, no longer the guarded drifter, moved with quiet confidence, claiming his place on this land and in this life. One old colleague, Sarah with her sharp bob and sharper wit, pulled Tracy aside by the herb garden. "The Ice Queen melts," she said with genuine warmth. "He's good for you. You're different, more yourself than I've ever seen you." Tracy laughed, waving her ring in the autumn sun. "I finally stopped running from what I really needed.
This is home now."
He's home." As winter approached, blanketing the fields in pristine white, they began planning in earnest. The wedding would be in spring under the ancient oak by the creek, with crabapple petals drifting like confetti. But more than that, they planned their shared future. Jake's drifter days had faded like smoke on the wind, his purpose found in the steady turn of seasons and in the woman who saw his fractures and called them foundations. They would expand the ecotourism venture, weaving veteran stories into the trails, Bennett's memory honored in the telling, healing offered to others who struggled as Jake had struggled. Tracy's consulting work flourished, her designs now informed by intimate knowledge of the land. Farm co-ops sought her expertise, drawn not just to her sharp mind but to the authenticity that came from truly living the life she was helping others build. Their history fueled their vision. Two broken people who'd found each other in the most unlikely place, who'd chosen trust over fear, vulnerability over safety, and in doing so had created something neither could have built alone. Winter nights found them on the porch glider, bundled in blankets, watching snow fall in the moonlight. Harlan and Elena would join them sometimes, glasses of mulled wine warming cold hands, sharing comfortable silence or trading stories of seasons past. "Like us after our storms," Elena would say, arm looped through her husband's. "Bent but blooming. Fiercer for having survived." Jake would pull Tracy closer, her head on his shoulder, the ring's emerald winking like a secret star. "From strangers and a terminal to this," he'd murmur. "To forever," she'd add softly. Their love had become the farm's newest legend, whispered over fences and around fire pits, a story of beginnings in sterile terminals leading to roots sunk deep in fertile earth. Of a woman who'd whispered her dreams to a sleeping stranger, and a man who'd pretended to sleep to test her heart, only to discover she'd already claimed it completely. In the quiet moments, wrapped in each other's warmth as winter wind howled outside, they would share their deepest fears and highest hopes. Plans for the wedding, dreams of the life they'd build, conversations about children, whether biological, adopted, or the family they'd create from the veterans and broken souls who'd find healing on this land as they had. "I used to think my scars made me unworthy," Jake said one night, his voice barely audible over the crackling fire. "What do you think now?" "Now I think they were preparing me. Every hurt, every loss, they taught me how to recognize something real when it finally appeared." He kissed her temple. "They taught me how to recognize you." Tracy's eyes filled with tears. "I spent so long building walls, Jake. So terrified of being hurt again that I almost missed the best thing that ever happened to me. But you didn't miss it. You were brave enough to whisper your dreams to a stranger, to take a chance on someone as broken as I was." "We were both broken," she corrected gently. "We still are in some ways. But we're healing together, and that makes all the difference." Under that winter moon, vast and silver as the future they claimed, Jake held Tracy close, both of them marveling at the unlikely journey that had brought them here. "Blossoms of trust," he murmured, the words both reflection and promise. "And belonging," she added. "Finally, truly belonging." From a failed test in an airport to a proposal by a creek. From two people running from their pasts to two people building a future together. From strangers to partners to soon-to-be husband and wife. Their love story was just beginning, but already it had transformed them both, teaching them that the greatest courage isn't in standing alone, but in letting someone stand beside you. That healing doesn't mean forgetting the wounds, but learning to carry them with someone who understands. As snow fell softly on the Iowa fields, blanketing everything in peaceful white, Jake and Tracy sat wrapped in each other's warmth, knowing that whatever storms might come, they would weather them together. They were two souls who'd found each other in the chaos of a delayed flight. They were two hearts that had finally, blessedly, come home. Harvest of Hearts. Winter had settled over the farm like a benediction, transforming the landscape into something from a snow globe, pristine, peaceful, and perfect. The community's annual winter festival was a tradition that stretched back generations, a celebration to break the monotony of the long, cold months and remind neighbors they weren't alone in facing the season's challenges. Tracy had chosen her dress with quiet deliberation, a flowing gown of deep crimson that stood out like a cardinal against the white landscape, the fabric catching the bonfire's dance of orange and gold. The neckline was elegant, the hem brushing her calves as she moved. Her auburn hair fell loose in waves, catching firelight and glowing like autumn remembered in the heart of winter. Jake couldn't keep his eyes from her, his hand finding the small of her back as they wove through the crowd gathered around the massive bonfire. Boots kicked up snow instead of dust, and the air carried the scent of wood smoke, mulled cider, and Elena's famous winter stew. "You're beautiful tonight," he murmured when the music swelled, his breath visible in the cold air, voice soft with wonder at this woman who'd transformed his life. The locals who'd once whispered about that scarred vet and the city girl now nodded with genuine warmth. Old Mr. Hargrove, his pipe clenched between his teeth, clapped Jake on the shoulder. "You too brought something special to these fields. Real special." Tracy laughed, the sound bright and unfiltered, her hand squeezing Jake's. Elena caught her eye from across the fire, her grin wide as the winter moon. "Dance through the dark, loves," she called. "That's how we survive the winter, together." The night pulsed with life despite the cold. Laughter boomed over the crackling fire, feet stomping to keep warm and to the rhythm of fiddles and banjos. Children darted between legs, shrieking with joy, while couples young and old spun in dizzying reels, cheeks flushed from exertion and the flask's warmth. When the band slowed to a crooning ballad, Jake felt Tracy shift against him. Without a word, he pulled her close, his one arm around her waist, the other cradling the back of her head and his thumbs stroking gently through her hair. They swayed together in the fire's glow, bodies close against the cold, moving as one to the music's plaintive call. "You've given me everything I didn't know I needed," he murmured into her hair, voice rough with emotion. She pressed closer, seeking his warmth. "Careful, soldier," she whispered with a smile he could hear in her voice. "You keep saying things like that, and I might start believing we really can have it all." "We can," he said with certainty. "We already do." Her mind wandered briefly to Mark at those stiff corporate events, his discomfort with anything genuine, his hand limp and lifeless in hers. Jake was different. He led like it mattered, like she mattered, with the same careful strength her father had shown her mother at family weddings. That tenderness that had made young Tracy believe in forever. Now, in Jake's arms under a winter sky, she believed again. As the bonfire burned low and the crowd began to thin, they slipped away hand in hand. The cold air bit at exposed skin, and Jake immediately shrugged off his jacket to drape over her shoulders. "The barn?" she asked, knowing the answer. "The hayloft," he confirmed. "Our spot." They navigated the snow-covered path, their breath forming clouds in the moonlight. The barn was warmer than outside, insulated by the animals below and the hay above. They climbed the ladder to their refuge, where bales were stacked and blankets waited, a nest they'd prepared earlier, anticipating this stolen moment. Moonlight filtered through the slats, painting everything in silver and shadow. Tracy reached the top first and turned to help him up, their hands clasping with familiar trust. "I love this place," she said softly, settling onto the blankets. "It's where I feel most like myself." Jake sat beside her, pulling another blanket around them both. "Tell me why." She leaned against him, his arm coming around her shoulders. "Because it's honest. Here there's no pretense and no performance. Just us. It is completely real and imperfect and exactly what we need." He kissed her temple. I used to think I'd never find this. A place where I could just be. Where the scars didn't matter, where the nightmares didn't define me. They don't, she said firmly. They're part of your story, but they're not the whole story. The whole story includes this, us, building something together. Love that heals instead of hurts. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the sounds of the distant celebration a gentle backdrop. Tracy's fingers found his, tracing the calluses earned from honest work. I've been thinking, she said carefully, about what comes next. After the wedding. Building a life together, not just a business. Tell me what you're thinking. I want to expand what we're doing, helping veterans find healing through the land, like you did. And I've been researching adoption agencies. She paused, vulnerability clear in her voice. I know we've talked about children, and I don't know if biology will cooperate at my age, but there are so many kids who need homes, and... He turned to face her fully, cupping her face in his hands. Tracy, whatever path we take to build our family, I'm with you. Biology, adoption, fostering, or creating community for those who need it, it all matters. What matters more than that is that we do it together. Tears welled in her eyes.
You mean that?
I've never meant anything more. She kissed him. She was pouring every ounce of gratitude and love into the connection. When they parted, she rested her head against his shoulder. I spent so many years thinking I had to have everything figured out, she whispered. The perfect plan, the perfect execution. But this, us, it's better because it's not perfect. It's real. Real is better than perfect, he agreed. Real is what lasts. They talked for hours in their nest of blankets and hay, planning and dreaming, about the spring wedding under the oak tree, about the veterans program they'd build together, about children they might adopt or foster or mentor, about growing old on this land, building something that would outlast them both. Do you remember that night in the airport? Tracy asked as the moon climbed higher. When you were testing me? Every second of it. I was so embarrassed when you told me you'd heard everything I whispered. She laughed softly. But now I'm glad, because it was the truth, all of it. The fields, the open sky, building something real together. I saw it then, even when it seemed impossible. It wasn't impossible, Jake said. It was just waiting for us to be brave enough to reach for it. She turned to look at him, her hand coming up to trace the scar along his jaw, the mark she'd first noticed in that terminal, the one that had told her he'd survived something terrible. You're the bravest person I know, she said. Not because of what you survived in the desert, though that's part of it.
But because you kept going.
You could have stayed cynical, stayed closed off. Instead, you let me in. You made it safe to let you in, he replied. You didn't pity me or try to fix me. You just saw me. Really saw me. That's the greatest gift anyone's ever given me. As the night deepened and the cold grew more intense, they burrowed deeper into their nest of blankets. The physical closeness was comforting, two bodies sharing warmth, two souls sharing truth. Tell me something. Anything, Jake, just talk to me.
Tracy said. Jake was quiet for some time.
Sometimes I still feel guilty about surviving when Bennett and the others didn't. Even with everything we've built, everything we have, there are moments when I wonder why I got this second chance and they didn't. That's survivor's guilt, she said gently. It's normal. But Jake, you're honoring them by living fully, by building something meaningful, by loving and being loved. That's not betraying their memory. That's making their sacrifice matter. He pulled her closer, his throat tight with emotion. How do you always know exactly what I need to hear? Because I've felt it too.
Different circumstances, but the same guilt.
After the divorce, after every business failure, I'd wonder what was wrong with me. Why I couldn't make it work. Why I kept losing what I thought I wanted.
She paused.
But I wasn't losing anything. I was learning what I actually needed, and what I needed was this. What I needed was you. What I needed was us, and it is this life we're building. Do you have no more doubts? He asked. Oh, I still have doubts, she admitted with a small laugh. About whether I'll be a good mother, whether the business will keep growing, whether I can balance everything. But I don't doubt us anymore. That's the one thing I'm absolutely certain of. I want to be your wife with all my heart. Me too, he said. For the first time in my life, I'm certain of something beyond the next mission, the next job, and the next place to run to. I'm certain of you, all of you, and everything that come with you. They eventually dozed off wrapped in each other's arms and surrounded by blankets, the cold kept at bay by shared warmth and the barn's insulation. When they woke to pre-dawn light filtering through the slats, they found themselves covered in a dusting of snow that had blown through the gaps, nature's blessing on their union. We should get back before Elena sends a search party, Tracy said reluctantly. 5 more minutes, Jake murmured, holding her tighter. She laughed and settled back against him. 5 more minutes. But it was closer to 30 before they finally made their way down the ladder and through the snow back to the farmhouse. Elena was already up, coffee brewing, and she took one look at them, snow-dusted, cheeks red from cold, eyes bright with happiness, and smiled knowingly. Good festival? She asked innocently. The best, Tracy said, accepting a steaming mug. The very best, Jake agreed, his arm around Tracy's waist as they stood together by the kitchen window, watching dawn break over the white fields. Elena watched them with satisfaction. These two broken souls who'd found each other in the most unlikely place, who'd chosen love over fear, vulnerability over safety, and in doing so had created something neither could have built alone. Harvest of hearts, she murmured, repeating her old saying. That's what you two are. A harvest of hearts, growing strong, even in winter. Later that day, after they'd warmed up and rested, Jake and Tracy sat down with Harlan and Elena to discuss their plans in more detail. The veterans program, the adoption process, the spring wedding, the expansion of the ecotourism business. You two have built something special here, Harlan said, his weathered hand covering Elena's. Not just for yourselves, but for this whole community. You came here broken, both of you, and you're leaving a legacy of healing. We're not leaving, Jake said quickly. I know, Harlan smiled. That's what I mean. You're planting roots, so deep they'll be here long after we're all gone. That's the kind of harvest that matters, the kind you can't measure in bushels or dollars. Tracy felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you. For taking us in, for believing in us, when we didn't believe in ourselves. That's what family does, Elena said simply. And you two are family now. Always have been, really, from the moment you walked through that door looking lost and found at the same time. That evening, as snow fell softly outside and a fire crackled in the hearth, Jake and Tracy curled up together on the couch. The winter festival had been perfect, a celebration of how far they'd come and a promise of everything still ahead. Festival magic. Tracy sighed, her head on his chest, listening to his steady heartbeat. Like Elena's stories, Jake agreed. Hope found in unexpected places. Love growing wild and strong. And ours? She asked, though she already knew the answer. He kissed the top of her head, his arms tightening around her. Just beginning, darlin'. A harvest of hearts, yours and mine, forever growing together. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the farm in white. But inside, their world was warm with firelight and love, passion tempered by trust, and their desire deepened by devotion. From strangers in an airport to partners in life. From broken souls running from their pasts to whole hearts building a future together. Their story wasn't perfect, but it was real, and real, they'd learned, was infinitely better. Winter's warmth. Snow fell in fat, lazy flakes that drifted from a slate-gray sky like whispered secrets, blanketing the farm in a profound hush that muffled the world's edges and turned the vast fields into a dreamscape of undulating white. With the harvest's clamor faded to memory, the days turned inward, cozy and cocooned, the long nights inviting a slowness that wrapped around Jake and Tracy like the flannel sheets they woke beneath each morning. The guest room's windows framed a world transformed, frost etching filigreed patterns on the panes. Tracy's remote work setup hummed from the scarred oak table in the kitchen, her laptop's glow a soft counterpoint to the wood stove's crackle, spreadsheets unfurling plans for the farm's sustainable agriculture branch. Breaks had become sacred rituals. Jake would appear soundless behind her chair, his hands settling on her shoulders to knead away the knots of deadline stress, his thumbs circling with practiced care. "You're tense," he'd murmur. "Long call with the co-op," she'd reply, leaning back into his touch. "But it's good stress. Growing stress." He'd press a kiss to the crown of her head, and she'd spin in the chair to pull him down beside her, stealing moments together before the workday reclaimed them both. One mid-December morning, when the snow piled high against the sills and the world outside felt impossibly distant, Tracy sat at the kitchen table wrapped in one of Jake's oversized sweatshirts, her hair knotted loosely at her nape. Jake came up behind her, his presence a warmth in the chill-drafted room. "Coffee," he offered, already pouring. "Please." She accepted the mug gratefully, their fingers brushing in the exchange, a small touch that still sent warmth through her. He settled into the chair beside her, close enough that their knees touched. "Tell me about this new project you've been working on." Her eyes lit up as she turned the laptop to show him. "It's a design for climate-resilient farm housing. Stormproof, energy-efficient, beautiful." "I'm thinking," she paused, suddenly vulnerable, "I'm thinking maybe we could build one here. For us. Our own place on the property." Jake studied the designs, then her face. "You want to build a home? With me?" "I want to build everything with you," she said quietly. "A home, a business, a family. All of it." He reached over, closing the laptop gently, giving her his full attention. "Tracy Russell, you continue to amaze me. Every day, you dream bigger, you reach further, and you want me there with you." "Always," she said. Do you want that too?" Instead of answering with words, he pulled her into his arms, holding her close as snow continued to fall outside. "More than I ever thought possible," he finally said. "A home. Our home. Yes." They sat there for a long time, planning and dreaming, their coffee growing cold as they sketched out futures and possibilities. Afternoons brought their own rituals. The short days meant finishing outdoor chores early, Jake clearing paths, tending to animals, chopping cordwood, while Tracy worked on client calls and proposals. They'd carved out time for each other in the quiet hours. Long baths in the upstairs clawfoot tub, steam rising while they talked about everything and nothing. Tracy would settle against Jake's chest, the water warm around them, his arms around her waist. "Tell me something I don't know about you," she'd say, her fingers tracing idle patterns on his forearm. "I wanted to be a teacher," he admitted one afternoon. "Before I enlisted. Thought maybe history or literature. Something where I could share stories, help kids understand the world." She turned to look at him, surprised. "You never mentioned that. Seemed like a dream from another life." "But lately," he paused. "Lately I've been thinking about it again. Not traditional teaching, maybe, but working with the veterans program we're planning. Sharing stories, helping guys process what they've been through." "Jake, that's perfect," she said, turning fully to face him despite the water sloshing. "You'd be incredible at that. You've lived it, you understand it, and you have such patience, such insight." "You think so?" "I know so." She cupped his face gently. "You helped me heal things I didn't even know were broken. Imagine what you could do for others who've walked similar paths." The conversation shifted to logistics, possibilities, and funding ideas. By the time the water cooled, they had the skeleton of a real plan. Night drew them to the fire's glow in the living room, the hearth a cavern of flickering gold that painted everything in dancing shadows. They'd pile blankets on the thick wool rug and curl up together, sometimes reading aloud to each other, sometimes just talking. One evening, Tracy's voice grew quiet as she shared a memory she'd never told anyone. "After the divorce, I had this apartment. 23rd floor, all glass and steel. It had a view of the whole city. I thought it represented everything I'd achieved." She paused. "But I'd stand at those windows at night, looking down at all those lights, all those people, and I felt completely alone. Like I was on the outside of life, looking in." Jake pulled her closer. "What about now?" "Now I'm on the inside," she said simply. "Here, with you, with Elena and Harlan, with this community, I finally feel like I'm part of something real." He understood exactly what she meant. The core was supposed to be that for me. Brotherhood, purpose, and belonging. For a while
is what it was.
But after the ambush, after they discharged me, I felt like a ghost, going through motions, but not really living. What changed? You, he said. That whisper in the airport. Someone seeing a future for me when I couldn't see one for myself. It planted a seed. And every day since, being here with you, it's like that seed is growing into something I never imagined possible. Tracy turned to kiss him, slow and tender, a promise exchanged without words. Stories continued to spill out in those firelit hours. Her college heartbreak, the boyfriend who disappeared without explanation, leaving her questioning her worth. His post-war rage, a job fair where people stared at his scars like he was damaged goods, the bathroom mirror he'd shattered with his fist, blood mixing with fury. I thought love was just bad timing, she confessed. That I'd missed my window, that career success meant I'd sacrifice the rest. I thought I was too broken to deserve love, he replied. Too damaged, too much baggage, too many ghosts. We were both wrong, she said. Completely wrong, he agreed. The vulnerability wove them tighter, threads of shared pain mending into something unbreakable. Their spring wedding loomed on the horizon like a beacon, the oak tree in bloom, guests mingling city sophistication with farm-worn warmth, petals snowing like blessings. But winter was weaving its own bonds, quieter but no less profound. A blizzard struck one weekend, fierce and unyielding, knocking out power and leaving them in a world of candlelight and wood smoke. Harlan and Elena in the main house, Jake and Tracy in the guest quarters, all four of them snowed in together, a forced slowdown that became a gift. They made meals together in Elena's kitchen, cooked on the wood stove and eaten by candlelight. They played cards and told stories, Harlan sharing tales of his war and recovery, Elena talking about rebuilding after the flood that had nearly destroyed this place. The worst storms, Elena said one night, her hand in Harlan's, teach us what really matters. You can lose everything, land, buildings, possessions, and still have everything if you have people who love you. Later, alone in their candlelit room, Jake's vulnerability surfaced in a way it hadn't before. They lay wrapped in quilts, the wind howling outside, and he finally voiced the fear that had been haunting him. What if I can't be a good father? He whispered into the darkness. What if I can't protect them the way I couldn't protect Bennett? What if the nightmares never fully stop, and I bring that into a child's life? Tracy didn't offer false assurances. Instead, she turned to face him, her hand finding his in the dark. I'm scared too. Scared I'm too old, too set in my ways, too focused on work. Scared I don't know how to put someone else first because I've spent so long putting myself first just to survive. So we're both terrified. Completely terrified, she agreed. But Jake, we'll figure it out together. You're not the same man you were when you left the desert. You've healed, you're healing. You have so much love in you, so much strength. Any child would be lucky to have you as a father. You really believe that? I know it, she said fiercely. The way you are with Harlan, with the guys at the VFW, with me, you show up. You're present. You care. That's what matters. He pulled her close, his throat tight. I don't deserve you. You absolutely do, she countered. And I deserve you. We both deserve this happiness, this future. We've earned it through every hard thing we've survived. The flashback hit him later that night. Desert sandstorms, squad huddled in a tense, flimsy shelter, trading stories to pass the howling hours. Bennett's voice through the grit. Your turn, Sarge. Tell us about that girl back home, the one with the laugh like summer. Tracy felt him tense beside her, recognized the signs. She didn't try to pull him out of it, but stayed close, her presence a quiet anchor. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. We tell stories during sandstorms.
Keep each other sane.
Keep each other human.
He paused.
Bennett always wanted to hear about life back home. About normal things, girlfriends, family dinners, Friday night football games. Things that seemed impossible out there. Tell me one, Tracy said softly. Tell me a story you told them.
So he did.
And in the telling, the memory lost some of its sharp edges, becoming something he could hold without bleeding. When he finished, Tracy shared her own storm story. The flood. Water to my knees, rising fast. Mom holding my hand so tight it hurt, but I was grateful for it. Scared out of my mind, but held. By her. By the neighbors hauling sandbags till dawn. We saved what we could, lost the rest, but we had each other. Mutual anchors, Jake said. Exactly, Tracy agreed. Then and now, we anchor each other. As the storm broke at dawn, sunlight piercing the clouds to gild the pristine drifts, they rose together and went to the window. The farm was transformed into a wonderland of white. It was beautiful, harsh, and full of promise. The oak tree in the distance stood draped in snow, a silhouette of their spring wedding to come. Winter's almost over, Tracy said. But winter's warmth stays with us, Jake replied, pulling her close. She leaned into him, both of them watching the sun rise over their snow-covered future. They'd survived their separate storms and found each other in the aftermath. They'd built trust from ashes, love from loneliness, and they were building a home from brokenness. The spring wedding would be beautiful, she had no doubt. But this, right here, snow falling softly outside while they stood wrapped in each other's warmth, this was what mattered. This quiet intimacy, this deep knowing, this choice they made every day to show up for each other honestly and completely. I love you, she said simply. I love you too, he replied. Forever. Outside, the world was white and clean and new. Inside, their hearts were warm and full and finally, blessedly home. The hard part of their journey was behind them. Ahead lay only the beautiful work of building a life together, one honest conversation, one shared dream, one chosen day at a time. Winter's warmth had claimed them fully. Spring would bring the wedding. But they were already married in every way that mattered, hearts bound, futures merged, and their souls intertwined. As the sun climbed higher and Elena called them to breakfast, they turned from the window hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next. They knew they would be together. Always together. The way it was meant to be before they even knew it. Eternal fields. Spring burst upon the farm like a long-held breath released, the air thrumming with the verdant pulse of rebirth. Fields greened in earnest, wildflowers nodding along fence rows in riots of violet and buttercup, the creek running fuller and clearer after winter's thaw. At the heart of it all stood the ancient oak, its gnarled branches budding tender with new leaves, a canopy of promise unfurling just in time for the vows that would bind Jake and Tracy forever. Preparations wove through their days like threads in a tapestry, each detail a quiet homage to their journey. Tracy's dress had been fashioned from the delicate lace of her mother's wedding gown, salvaged from the attic trunk where it had lain forgotten amid flood-damaged relics. Elena had mended it herself, needle flashing in lamplight, stitching tears with the same steady hand that had rebuilt the barn, turning fragility into fortitude. The ivory fabric now flowed like a cascade of petals, honoring both past and present. Jake's suit, purchased with funds from his grandfather's inheritance, that oil money he'd once seen as a burden, hung crisp and black in his closet. Feels like armor, not chains, he'd murmured when trying it on, the jacket's cut falling sharp over his shoulders. The scar along his neck was visible at the open collar, no longer hidden but honored, a part of his story, not something to conceal. The ceremony unfolded on a morning kissed by dawn's rose-gold light, simple yet profound as the land that cradled it. A circle of wild grasses lay mown soft under the oak, wooden chairs draped in tulle and twine for their guests. Chicago colleagues in pressed linens mingled with farmhands in clean denim, two worlds meeting, merging, and celebrating. Elena officiated in a gown of sage silk, her voice warm as heath fire. Harlan stood steadfast as best man, his presence a testament to found family. Friends formed a loose ring, faces alight with the quiet awe of witnesses to redemption. Sarah from Tracy's firm, dabbing tears. A cluster of VFW brothers, patches gleaming. They were nodding solemn approval. Tracy appeared on Harlan's arm, the lace whispering against her skin, and with wildflowers crowning her auburn hair. Her eyes locked on Jake's from the first step, a smile blooming slow and sure. No trace of the shy stranger who'd whispered confessions to a sleeping soldier in an airport terminal. Jake waited at the oak's base. His suit was impeccable, and his green eyes bright with emotion. His scar stood proud, a lightning bolt of survival against the white of his shirt. As she reached him, he took her hands, his thumbs stroking her knuckles in silent promise. "You're everything," he breathed, his voice thick with wonder. Elena's words flowed, simple as the creek song. It was invoking floods that was weathered and ambushes that was endured, speaking of love as the ultimate harvest, the truest cultivation. Rings were exchanged under budding branches, hers the silver vine with its emerald chip, now joined by a matching band, his a sturdy mate, etched with faint ridges like field rose. From whispers in a sterile terminal, Tracy began, her voice steady but trembling with truth, eyes shimmering as oak petals drifted down like benedictions, where I bared my foolish dreams to a man I thought was sleeping, to this, under branches that know our roots.
I vow to see you, Jake.
All of you, scars and strength, and that quiet courage that saved me too. To build with you, not despite the storms, but because of them. Forever, my love.
Equal.
Endless. A tear traced her cheek, caught by his thumb, and the circle hushed. All had breaths held. From tests born of fear, he replied, voice cracking with emotion, his grip tightening as if to anchor them both. Where I pretended sleep to guard a heart too battered to hope, to trust, earned in your touch, your whispers that thawed me. I vow to hold you, Tracy, not as a mission, but as home. Through fields green and winters deep, your ambition's my compass, your laughter my dawn. Forever yours. Vulnerable.
Whole.
The kiss sealed eternity, tender at first, a brush of lips like spring rain, then deepening with the weight of all they'd survived and all they'd become. Cheers rose from the circle. Elena's whooped the loudest. That's my harvest. Their honeymoon unfolded not in distant lands, but in the farm's embrace. The hayloft had been transformed, bales draped in silk sheets, scattered with rose petals from Elena's hothouse, lanterns strung like captured stars. A bottle of Harlan's dandelion wine waited in a bucket of creek water. They climbed the ladder hand in hand as night fell soft as eiderdown, the world beyond a hush of crickets and spring winds. In the loft's golden glow, they stood facing each other, still marveling at the journey that had brought them here. I keep thinking about that airport, Tracy said softly, reaching up to loosen his tie. How lost I felt. How alone. I was more lost than you knew, Jake replied, his hands gentle at her waist. Testing you, because I couldn't believe someone could actually see past the damage. There was never just damage, she said fiercely. There was always this, the man you are, strong and kind and brave enough to let me in. They held each other in the lamplight, two people who'd traveled so far from that terminal, from their separate loneliness, to find this moment of absolute belonging. I love you, he said simply. Every day, more than the day before. I love you, she echoed. Every scar, every story, every moment that made you who you are. They made love that night with tenderness and passion intertwined, not a performance, but a conversation without words, bodies speaking what hearts already knew. Afterward, wrapped in silk and each other's arms, they talked until dawn painted the sky pink. Dreams spilled like creek water in spring, children with his green eyes and her auburn curls, running through fields he'd expand, old rifts mending over Elena's pies, his family, maybe invited someday, forgiveness forged in the farm's patient grace. We'll make it ours, she whispered, fingers tracing the ring on his hand. Legacy in every row and every laugh. Already ours, he replied. Has been since that first hello. Years unfolded like the farm's own seasons, each a chapter in their eternal story. The business thrived under Tracy's vision, her firm branching into resilient designs that fortified farms against floods and droughts. Eco-tours drew visitors to trails mapped by Jake's steady hand, veteran stories woven into interpretive guides. Bennett's memory lived on in the work they did, helping other soldiers find healing in the land. The farm expanded with Harlan's blessing and Elena's encouragement. A nursery was added to the house, then filled with the sound of children. First a boy, sturdy and thoughtful with Jake's green eyes and a laugh that echoed his father's rare grins. Then a girl, fierce and auburn-haired like her mother, with Tracy's quick mind and a love for climbing the very oak that had witnessed their vows. Jake's nightmares lessened over time, though they never completely disappeared. But now when he woke gasping, Tracy was there, and the children's toys scattered across the floor reminded him he was home, safe, and he was building something good. Tracy's business continued to grow, but she'd learned the art of balance: mornings for client calls, afternoons for family, evenings for Jake and the quiet intimacy they'd cultivated. Success looked different now, felt different. Better. "Remember when I thought I had to choose?" she said one evening, watching their children play in the yard. "Career or family, ambition or love. You are never going to settle for less than everything," Jake replied, his arm around her waist. "I'm glad you didn't." The children brought new dimensions to their love: late-night conversations about parenthood, shared exhaustion and shared joy, watching each other become mother and father while remaining partners and lovers. They made time for each other despite the chaos: date nights at the local diner, stolen moments in the barn when Harlan and Elena watched the kids, weekends away when they could manage it. Intimacy evolved but never diminished. Physical closeness remained important: tender mornings, passionate reunions after time apart, the comfort of familiar touch, but it was grounded in something deeper now. The absolute trust that came from facing life together, from choosing each other every day. Anniversaries became touchstones, marking their journey. The first anniversary, they camped under the stars, Jake sharing desert stories without flinching, Tracy listening without fear, reclaiming his past by making new memories. The fifth, they returned to the hayloft, finding it still magical even as their bodies bore the marks of time and childbirth and hard work. "More beautiful now," Jake insisted, and meant it. The 10th, with both children in school, they took a real honeymoon, to the mountains, to the ocean, exploring places neither had seen. But both agreed nowhere felt quite like home, like their farm. Jake's flashbacks softened into lessons shared over bedtime stories. Bennett's memory became a gift he could give his children, tales of brotherhood that taught them about courage, sacrifice, and love. Tracy's journey, once a weight of betrayals and solitary climbs, transformed into strength she could model for their daughter. "You can be ambitious and loving," she'd say. "You can build empires and families. There's no choice to make if you find the right partner." Jake's family proved harder. His mother sent a card for the wedding, stilted and formal. His sister called once, years later, after seeing a news piece about the veterans program. The conversation was awkward but hopeful. "Maybe someday. Some bridges take longer to rebuild," Tracy said. "Some aren't worth rebuilding," Jake replied. "The family we've made, here with you and the kids, with Harlan and Elena, and this community, that's enough. That's everything." The farm became their legend. Neighbors spoke of the vet and the city woman who'd turned suspicion into roots, their home a beacon for those seeking healing. Veterans came through the program Jake developed, finding in the land what he had found: peace, purpose, and a way forward. Tracy mentored young women entrepreneurs, teaching them that success didn't require sacrifice, that they could build lives that honored all their pieces, not just one. Together, they proved that broken people could heal, that love built on honesty and vulnerability could weather any storm, that whispered dreams in airport terminals could become lasting realities. Decades passed. Children grew and left for college, then returned with partners of their own. Grandchildren arrived, tumbling through the same fields their parents had explored, climbing the same oak tree. Jake's hair went silver, his body showing the accumulated wear of farm work and old injuries. Tracy's face gained lines around her eyes and mouth, laugh lines. That was well-earned. But their connection never dimmed. One spring morning, with grandchildren playing nearby and the fields stretching gold to the horizon, Jake led Tracy to a bench he'd carved and placed beneath the oak tree. "From tests to this," he murmured, taking her hand, the rings worn smooth as river stones after so many years. Eternal fields, my love, all ours. She leaned into him, the spring breeze carrying petals around them like it had on their wedding day. Whispers to forever, she replied softly. Wouldn't trade a single moment, not even the hard ones. Especially not the hard ones, he agreed. They taught us how to hold on. Their grandchildren's laughter echoed across the fields. The oak tree, which had witnessed their vows so many years ago, now shaded multiple generations of the family they'd built. Do you ever think about that night in the airport? Tracy asked. How different our lives might have been if I hadn't whispered, if you hadn't heard. Every day, Jake said. And every day I'm grateful you were brave enough to speak your heart. To see something in me I couldn't see in myself. You made it safe to be brave, she replied. You still do. As the sun climbed higher and their daughter called them to lunch, they rose from the bench hand in hand, still partners, still lovers, still choosing each other after all these years. The farm would continue after them, passing to their children and grandchildren. The Veterans Program would help countless more broken soldiers find healing. Tracy's firm would keep building resilience into communities across the country. But their greatest legacy was simpler than all that. They had loved each other well. Through nightmares and flashbacks, through business struggles and family challenges, through the mundane and the magnificent, they had shown up for each other, honest and vulnerable and present. From strangers in a terminal to soulmates under an oak tree. From testing and walls to trust and openness. From survival to living, from existing to thriving, from loneliness to love so deep it echoed through generations. As they walked back to the farmhouse, grandchildren running ahead, spring blooming eternal around them, both Jake and Tracy understood the profound truth their journey had taught them. Real love isn't found in perfect people or perfect circumstances. It's built in the daily choice to see each other truly, to hold space for pain and joy equally, to grow together instead of apart. It's whispered in airport terminals and shouted from hayloft. It's tested by storms and proven by seasons. It's cultivated like crops, with patience, with care, with faith that what you plant will grow into something sustaining. Their love was all of that and more. It was eternal fields stretching to the horizon, forever green, forever growing, forever home. It all began with a woman brave enough to whisper her dreams, and a man brave enough to finally, blessedly listen. Thank you for sharing this journey with me. If Jake and Tracy's story touched your heart, show your support, hit subscribe, tap like, share this episode with someone who loves a powerful love story, and drop a comment telling me what moment stayed with you. Your voice keeps this world alive. And don't go far, our next story begins soon in Frozen Whispers Book 3, The Promise We Kept. I can't wait to continue this journey with you. For my wife, when everyone else saw damage, you saw potential. When the world wrote me off as broken, you saw someone worth fighting for. You didn't fix me, you gave me something better. You gave me purpose, meaning, and a reason to believe in us when no one else did. We are veterans, both of us. We know what it means to carry weight that others can't see, to fight battles that don't end when the war does. But we also know what it means to have someone in the foxhole with you, pulling you through when you can't pull yourself. You are my constant support through everything, every flashback, every hard day, every moment I doubted myself. You never doubted us. This story is a tribute to you, to us, to the life we've built together by refusing to give up on each other. Tracy found Jake in an airport terminal. I found you and you found me, and together we found home. Thank you for every day, every year, every moment of choosing us. With all my love, J. H. D. Langren. The Choice by J. H. D. Langren. They said we didn't fit. Too different, too strange, like puzzle pieces from separate boxes. Forced together by foolish hands. They shook their heads and whispered, mapped out all the ways we'd fail, counted incompatibilities like currency, predicted our undoing with certainty. But you saw something else. Not broken but unfinished. Not damaged but waiting. Not wrong but misunderstood. Where others saw fragments.
You found a mosaic. Where they saw chaos.
You heard music only we could dance to. You took these jagged edges, these pieces I thought were worthless, and held them to the light until they shimmered. You gave meaning to the scars, purpose to the pain, turned my scattered parts into something whole. They were wrong about us, or maybe we were wrong for everyone else, but achingly, perfectly, impossibly right for each other. This was never their choice to understand. It was ours to make. It was ours to live. And we chose this. We chose us. We chose love when logic said no. You are my choice. The one that made no sense to anyone but my heart. The only decision that ever mattered.